All right, let's get right into it. When you hear the name Beastie Boys, what pops into your head? Probably those wild party anthems, right? Or maybe their groundbreaking hip hop. But their real story, it's about so much more than just the music. It's actually one of the most incredible stories of evolution, both artistic and personal, that you'll ever come across. We're going to track how three buddies from New York City went from being scrappy punk rockers to absolute global icons. And then, well, into something else entirely.
Take this line, for instance. It's from their 1994 hit, Sure Shot, and that's Adam Yauch, MCA, on the mic. It's so thoughtful, so respectful, and just a universe away from that loud party boy image they started with. This quote right here, it's like the destination at the end of a very, very long road.
So yeah, that brings us to the big question. The whole point of this explainer, really. How on earth does a group that got famous for the ultimate frat party song end up writing lyrics about respect and putting on massive concerts for human rights? To figure that out, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning.
So before there was any hip-hop, before Def Jam Records was even a thought, there was punk rock. See, the Beastie Boys weren't some manufactured group. They came straight out of that raw, aggressive hardcore scene in New York City in the late 70s and early 80s. And that's where they got that DIY, do-it-yourself spirit, that rebellious energy that defined them from day one. Their early timeline shows you exactly how they morphed. They kick things off in '78 as a hardcore band called the Young Aborigines. Then in '81, Adam Yauch joins on bass and they become the Beastie Boys. But 1983, that's the turning point. They put out this track, Cookie Puss, which was literally just a prank phone call over a beat. And it totally changes their trajectory. It gets them on the radar of this young producer, Rick Rubin, and boom, by '84, they're signed to Def Jam, the hottest new label in hip-hop. And that partnership with Rick Rubin, it led to something just huge. Get this, in 1986, their debut album, Licensed to Ill, did something that no rap album in history had ever done before. It hit #1. Not on the rap charts, on the Billboard 200, the main chart. So they weren't just successful, they were a full-blown cultural phenomenon. They were mixing these heavy rock guitar riffs with hip-hop beats, and it just totally exploded. But here's the thing. That massive success came with a pretty big price tag. The band always said that whole beer spraying, obnoxious party animal thing was a joke. It was supposed to be a parody of that exact culture. But nobody got the joke. The public took it completely literally. They ended up caught in this reputational trap, this image that wasn't them, and getting out of it would basically define the whole next chapter of their career. And to break out of that trap, they had to rebel again. After a really nasty fight over money, they walked away from Def Jam and Rick Rubin, packed up and moved to LA, and just completely blew up their sound. This wasn't just a move across the country. It was a total creative rebirth, and it was powered by some revolutionary new tech. And that tech was digital sampling. Now, sampling wasn't brand new, but what the Beastie Boys were about to do with it, no one had ever done it like this. They and their new producers, the Dust Brothers, didn't just see it as a way to loop a drum beat. No, they saw it as a way to build these dense, entire sonic worlds out of tiny little pieces of other people's records. It was like building a sonic Frankenstein. Just look at that number. Over 105 different samples, all crammed into one album. Their 1989 masterpiece, Paul's Boutique, was this insane psychedelic patchwork of funk, soul, rock, jazz, you name it. It was completely unlike anything anyone had ever heard before. I mean, what a way to prove you're more than a one-trick pony. This just screams ambition. But, okay, here's the trade-off. You see the massive #1 success of Licensed to Ill, right? Well, Paul's Boutique, it topped out at number 14. And at the time, man, people called it a total flop, a commercial failure. But looking back now, it was probably the single most important move they ever made. They basically traded a guaranteed hit for complete and total artistic freedom. That's a huge gamble. So after proving they could make art with samplers, the band shifted gears again. This time, it was all about getting total control, not just creatively, but financially too. This next phase was about building their own little empire, from scratch, completely on their own terms. And they had a very clear plan for getting that independence. First, they'd already left their label. Next, they built their own studio, G-Son, which became their creative hub. Then, and this is so important, they went back to their punk roots and started playing their instruments again. And finally, they started their own record label and magazine, Grand Royal, becoming these cool tastemakers for a whole generation. And being their own bosses led to this incredible explosion of new music. With Check Your Head, you get this raw, live, messy mix of funk, punk, and rap all smashed together. Then, just 2 years later, with ill communication, they'd perfected it. They were blending those live instruments with really sophisticated sampling, creating legendary tracks like Sabotage. I mean, come on, you can probably hear that iconic fuzzed-out bass line from MCA in your head right now. And this is the part of the story where things go from being about musical growth to personal growth. As the guys got older, their perspective on the world totally changed. And it was really Adam Yauch who started using their massive global platform for something way bigger than just selling records. So after a trip to Nepal, Adam Yauch becomes a practicing Buddhist and gets really passionate about the cause of Tibetan independence. This directly led to the Tibetan Freedom Concerts. I mean, just look at these numbers. We're talking about 100,000 people in San Francisco, 120,000 in DC, millions of dollars raised. This was the biggest benefit concert series since Live 8, and it brought a serious human rights issue right to the front door of a whole generation of young fans. Their activism also started to look inward. On that same song, Sure Shot, Yauch gets on the mic and publicly apologizes for the band's past misogyny. It was just a shocking moment of self-reflection and accountability, especially coming from a group that got so much heat for how they treated women early on. This was them growing up, right there on a platinum album for everyone to hear. And it wasn't a one-off thing. It wasn't just Yauch. In 1999, Ad Rock, Adam Horovitz, wrote this letter to a magazine, formally apologizing for the homophobic stuff they said when they were younger. They weren't just trying to forget their past. They were actively trying to make up for it. They were taking full responsibility for their words and the hurt they caused. So, at the end of the day, when you look back at the Beastie Boys, their legacy isn't just a playlist of hits. It's the story of that journey. It's the story of their evolution. They really did leave behind a kind of blueprint for how artists can not only survive, but actually get better by constantly changing, innovating, and maybe most importantly, by just growing up. Their legacy is just so layered. They knocked down all these walls for hip-hop, bringing it to new audiences. They took sampling and turned it into a true art form. They were super early on embracing the internet, giving away free MP3s. They won Grammys in rap and alternative music in the same year. But that last point right there, that might be the most powerful part of their whole story. They proved that it was possible to mess up, to own your mistakes, and to become a better person, all with the world watching your every move. And that really leaves us with one last thing to think about. In today's world of social media, of cancel culture, the story of the Beastie Boys and their public journey towards accountability feels more important than ever. They showed it could be done. So the real question is, in the world we live in now, who's going to be brave enough to do it next?